let's get started, okay? So, Fahmi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here in Dortmund. It's been a while since I've been in Germany, so I appreciate the welcome. I appreciate everybody who's stayed to listen. I think they'll find this very interesting.
Yeah, actually, it's going to be particularly interesting considering Fahmi's background, right? And there are a lot of people that are building in blockchain that don't have this same background, and I believe it's a huge benefit to what we're building and the perspective that comes with it, right? So let's start off with just a little bit of your background before we dig into what is Midnight.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a financier by background. I spent 2 decades in that industry. I was very fortunate, spent 17 years at Marshall Wace. I saw them grow from $1 billion of assets up to $45 billion of assets. Help, that growth from a middle back office perspective. I understand financial rails, and finance is finance. We often get into crypto, blockchain. We talk about DeFi and TradFi. There is no DeFi or TradFi. It's finance. If you trade FX, equities, fixed income, you don't talk about different financial rails. You talk about destinations and channels. Blockchain is just another rail. So I was very fortunate there. Then I helped a former Citadel CIO spin out his hedge fund, $1.2 billion launch. And that's when I was asked to join Polkadot. So I worked for Gavin Wood and Parity, delved into the technology. I wasn't interested in crypto. I was interested in the technology. I've worked with quants. I've worked with software engineers. How do you make businesses more efficient? How do you deliver financial products or efficiencies using technology? So got involved, learned with some great engineers, learned under Gavin. And then about 18 months ago, Charles Hoskinson, another Ethereum alumni, co-founder, asked me to join Input-Output for a project called Midnight. And earlier this year, Midnight Foundation launched. Midnight is a brand new blockchain. It's not a private blockchain. It's a privacy-enabling blockchain. It will allow individuals, users, applications, corporates to present data in the form of proof. So their metadata, first and foremost, is fully protected and shielded. Their transactions are shielded. But through the smart contract technology, they can disclose information or provide viewing keys. So if we break that down, what does that mean? It allows corporates to come in. It allows identity to come in. If you think about Web 2, one of the first things that Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of HTTP, one of the co-founders of that, inventors, he said one of the mistakes they made was not put identity at the core of the internet. That would have prevented 95% of frauds and scams on Web 2. And yet we've made the same mistake in Web 3. So Midnight is here to challenge that perspective and to bring wide adoption to blockchain technology.
Wow, that was very powerfully said, and there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I like what you said about it's not DeFi, it's not TradFi, it's finance, right? You simplify this in a way that makes it really digestible to people, especially given your background, and that we need to get that out there, the essence of the core atomic building blocks of the future of this tech, right? Not just the financial side, but also the use cases, the practical cases, the real world cases, and why that privacy first or the data protection is so important to scale, and why it's kind of like contrary to the current narrative or some narratives that is maybe a nefarious thing or privacy is not a good thing. It's an essential thing.
Privacy is a fundamental human right. Let's just start with that premise.
Let's start with that, in fact.
So why the biggest tool for money laundering is the US dollar. It's cash.
Right, that's a fact.
So suddenly blockchain and the technology allows nefarious activity. I'm aware of major banks who've been fined for AML breaches for laundering money inadvertently. Blockchain technology is about decentralization. If we think back to the ethos of Bitcoin and why many of us came into this space, it was about the freedoms to remove of disintermediation. Remove the ability for a bank where your hard-earned salary has gone to determine whether you have access to financial rails or not. For you to own your assets, and for individuals to get access to marketplaces that are often the premise of wealthy or large institutions like hedge funds.
Right.
I could get leverage at basis points, whereas most people, when they get a mortgage, are paying percentage points because of access and scale. And what technology allows and Midnight wants to enhance is that access, is to go back to that key theme of that association, that freedom of association that blockchains allow and decentralization allows, the freedom of commerce, that you are the owner of your assets and how you want to leverage them or use them or present them. And the freedom of expression, the ability to have a voice and not be censored. And to do that in a compliant way.
Which is the tricky part, right?
Yes.
But now we're getting there, and that's what this movement is all about, is how do we move this along and make it scalable with that element of privacy that everybody deserves and what we fight for so hard in the offline world, like I mentioned earlier. So that should be a given now in blockchain. And I think that's important to set the tone about the essence of blockchain, as you did, for people to remember, why are we here and what are we fighting for?
Yeah, look, that freedom that Bitcoin suddenly ushered in, first generation. Second generation was Ethereum, programmability. Third generation was about scalability and interoperability. But let's break that down, interoperability. And we'll go back to privacy. To bring the audience, because often the audience are listeners and they don't participate, can I ask the audience just to show me their hands if they bought a coffee on the way to this conference today? They bought breakfast, coffee, something.
Yeah.
Fine. That person there, sorry, I don't know your name. I'm going to ask you to shout out. When you bought that coffee, did you tell everybody in this room what you bought? No. That's because transactions are private. And yet, every time you do something on a blockchain, it is public. Anonymity, pseudo-anonymity, is not privacy. And large corporates are not going to put their business transactions on-chain. Stablecoins, RWAs, large investors are not going to hold those in public wallets. It's not the ownership that matters, it's how they trade. At Marshall Wace, at Fifth Delta, at other hedge funds, the secret sauce is in analyzing data and executing it. How you get into a position, how you get out. Making that secret available through your transactions is why large corporates are not going to move on-chain. Paying salaries in stablecoins will not happen on-chain. Why? Because the first thing you'll do when you receive your salary in stablecoins is look at the wallet that paid you. You might check, do they have enough funding to keep paying you, just to give yourself security? My company's in a good place. But then you might look at every other transaction that happened on that date. Are you the best paid person in your company? If you're a startup with 10 people and you're the 7th best paid person, suddenly you don't feel as valued. That is a problem with stablecoins and public blockchains. So in Midnight, we very much believe that you should be able to have a public state and a private state and everything in between. You should be able to disclose to parties you want to disclose to. Imagine you have a pool of collateral. You should be able to present that to certain parties so they can price that for you, so you can understand leverage. And they should be able to bid for that without them knowing who the other people in the room are. That is what happens in normal technology today. And yet in blockchain, for all the freedoms, we accepted transparency was something that is fine. And with the advent of zero-knowledge technology and some of the work we've been doing and enhancing that, and also the smart contract technology that allows disclosures, we believe we can get to a world which is much more reminiscent of the privacy and confidentiality that we expect in our physical world and our digital world.
Wow. Yeah, that is a really beautiful picture that you painted, and that is essentially what the missing piece is in order to get these big corporations and the institutions, and until then we're siloed. This is not going to scale, it's not going to be the size we want it to be or integrate into everyday life until we can make this happen. And so what we're fighting for on the other side is freedom. Right?
Yes, yeah. And freedom, again, let's touch on the third generation of interoperability. When you're in Solana, let's say, and I'm picking Solana because they're one of the ecosystems that we are asking and encouraging to come to Midnight, and you want to use some application or service from Ethereum, whether it's the L1 or the L2s, doesn't matter. That consumption is not consumption, it's investment. You have to go and own the foreign asset, the foreign token, just so you can consume a service. In normal technology, Web 2 technology, many corporates have multiple technology stacks. AWS Cloud, Snowflake database, other services. They don't own those services, they consume them. And they consume them because they know capacity is predictable, cost is predictable. In blockchains, tokenomics are broken. And I say that, and I'm happy to be challenged, because the very asset you want to own to gain value and appreciation is the very asset that you cannibalize to pay for transactions. You pay for ETH transactions in Ether. You pay for Solana transactions in Sol. So that's alien. You don't buy your iPhone using Apple shares. You don't buy Amazon groceries using Amazon shares. So in Midnight, we're encouraging or moving away from tribalism. We have a dual tokenomic model, a dual resource model. There is going to be a night token that we will distribute, and that will give you ownership and utility. But it will emit a resource, a computational function, which gives you privacy-enabling services. And that's it's like having a share that gives a dividend. If you want more dividend, you have more shares. If you sell the shares, you get no dividend. Night will emit dust. Dust gives you access. But for the first time in a blockchain, other chains, other applications, other services can now get consumption without ownership. They can lease dust from owners of Night. So whether you're building in Web3 on another chain, building on Web3 natively on Midnight, or building in Web2 and you want to use Midnight as an authentication or a privacy layer, now you can consume that service, which means for corporates, for builders, their money doesn't have to go into an investment, which is volatile. They can just consume transactions, privacy-enabling transactions as a service. So not only are we looking at privacy and how that enhances adoption, but we're looking at the tokenomics and how we move away from tribalism to true interoperability.
Oh, you're hitting on all of the things that I find most important right now at this very point in time, at this inflection point in the industry, right? It's the interoperability and it's the scalability, and how do we achieve that? So Midnight is very much at the forefront of that. And you've been in headlines recently for the bold move that you did with the glacier drop.
Yes.
Yeah, that's been all of the talk right now, and it was, I think, the biggest airdrop in crypto history, or one of them.
Well, we hope so. We'd hope so. We still have time. So we believe so much in our technology. So we're not funded by VCs. We are funded by one entrepreneur, Charles Hoskinson, a student of blockchain. He was in Bitcoin. He was a co-founder of Ethereum. Then he founded Cardano. And he's looked at why there hasn't been mass adoption. We all talk about liquidity in Ethereum. No. As much as I love the people in this room, it's in the people in the stadium who bring liquidity. It's the people in the banks, it's the people at Coca-Cola, Amazon, and others. That's the liquidity we have not trapped, the trillions of dollars. And they're not going to bring it without privacy, without enabling that. So we believe so much in the technology, we're giving it away. All 24 billion tokens, like all 100% supply, we're giving it away for 8 different ecosystems to come and claim, to own part of Midnight. And that's going to Cardano, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche. BATS, the Brave Privacy Network, BNB Chain, and I'm going to forget the eighth one. XRP, yep. Thank you very much. So the reason we're giving it away is, so not only do they own Midnight and want to participate, but so they get consumption of Midnight. They will own Night, which will give them dust, give them access. And we want applications from those networks to come and build privacy-enabling solutions. Because if you build it on Midnight, that privacy then extends back to the other chain. You can think about Midnight, even if you just build a simple KYC, if you build it across Solana, you've got to build a different solution for Ethereum, a different solution for every other chain. Build it once on Midnight, full privacy-enabling solution, and it becomes a 2FA to every application, every chain, because they just consume it as a ping. No different to Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. That's just a simple use case.
Wow, I love that analogy of the 2FA for every chain.
Yeah.
That really paints the picture of what Midnight does.
Yes.
Right? So then that being said, what are some of like the ideal use cases or different types of, real-world use cases that could come to you and say, hey, I want to integrate this?
Everything. So I'm greedy and ambitious, so I think everything. But at the moment, we're focused on, we have over 85 partners signed up, building within Midnight testnet as we move towards mainnet in November. We have RWAs, we have stablecoins. Why should a stablecoin be public? The essence of a stablecoin should be public in terms of the size, the distribution, the backing, the asset backing, but the ownership should be private. So Midnight enables that. Once you have the stablecoin or the RWA privately held, how do you disclose that to counterparties, large institution custodians, lenders, so you can get better leverage, better pricing? So finance matters, payment rails, leverage, collateral, lending, borrowing. We think also that allows regulated solutions in blockchain because of the identity that you can wrap into that. Healthcare. Think of a world where healthcare, how you move your clinical data around from one private clinic to another or a public clinic to another. Think about how you can then opt in to allow that data to be analyzed, researched by large pharmaceutical companies. So now the healthcare company is getting revenue from pharmaceutical companies for that research and that database, which otherwise would not be accessible. And in return, the healthcare company is generating revenues, which they might use to subsidize the insurance premiums of their clients. Cheaper insurance means more clients, more data, more revenue. You see the flywheel here on healthcare. AI technology. How do you prove AI is valid, that the proof of that source is genuine? Confidential compute. How do you make sure that one compute environment, TE environment, can speak to another without disclosing their state? And then the last one is, there is the last one. It is around, it escapes my mind, sorry, long day, long travel. But we think there's other areas we can help. So if you're a builder, if you're a corporate, if you care about adoption, you care about decentralization, but you care about adoption from clients, then I think Midnight enables that. And we're not saying come build everything on Midnight, but you can also think about how you build hybrid applications, just like the technology stacks that large corporates use today.
Wow, that was really amazing breakdown of who should be approaching, which is basically there is no non-valid use case for this, right? This is the way of the future.
Yeah, look, I was speaking to somebody, if everybody's ever bought a ticket for a football game or for a concert, often you buy it through Ticketmaster, and you pay an extortionate fee, especially in the secondary market. But that's because whether it's hotel rooms or tickets at concerts or football games, companies like Ticketmaster, Expedia buy up the rooms. Now, put that on a blockchain, multiple issues. You think you're decentralizing, you think you're helping everyone, no. Because now suddenly everybody knows how much the stadium paid revenues to Taylor Swift for her concerts. You know how much now that stadium is making from deals with these other partners, and you know how much the individuals are paying for that. Now, if you're Taylor Swift, fine, because you're probably the #1 pop star, biggest concerts of all time. If you're Billie Eilish, now suddenly you're saying you're getting less dollars than Taylor Swift. And now the stadium owners, the concert owners, the promoters all have to answer to that because it's public. We have to recognize that blockchains allow decentralization, but decentralization doesn't mean I have to tell you everything I do. And that's the fixation that we want to change in this industry. You can have privacy, you can have disclosures, all on Midnight, and we can extend that to other chains, to other builders, to other applications. And what we really want is for you guys to win, because the Genius Act in the US, which will bring in more stablecoins, favors the big banks, the very parties that we wanted to not remove, but to challenge. So we're saying, come work with us, small or big. But Midnight and that privacy enabling capability with disclosures is what empowers you to go and challenge the big people and still win. Because if we don't, that wave of institutional adoption, which is coming because of changes in regulation, that wave will crush us all. So tribalism doesn't work, and transparency doesn't work. And we think with Midnight, we can enable both disclosures and privacy, but avoid tribalism by encouraging everybody to come and work with us.
That was a really powerful way to wrap up this fireside chat. I really appreciated all those analogies. And the banking thing was something that we talked about before that really got me going. It's like the very people we wanted to challenge and the system we wanted to challenge is now implemented with better rails. And
they have more money. They have more technologists.
right.
They have access to politicians that we don't have. The regulations will improve them. Intelligent regulations will open up blockchain industry for adoption. But we have to be careful that if we don't think about it correctly, the incumbents win. And what this industry is about, what these entrepreneurs are about, what everybody's in this room, what everybody's in this industry, is to challenge the status quo. And we at Midnight are doing that by challenging what blockchains do today and saying there's a different way to do it, because we want to see mass adoption.
Brilliant. This is such a brilliant team here at Midnight. So please do, if you're a founder, builder, approach Fahmi and the team and think about how you can integrate, because this is the way of the future. And I hope that it really sunk in as Fahmi gave us all these brilliant analogies. And on that note, it was amazing getting to talk to you today. And please do go up to him and ask him all about Midnight, because it's truly amazing. So thank you, Fahmi.
Thank you, Megan. Brilliant. Thank you.